So, welcome to another episode of Antinatalism Around the World. So, today we are doing India, which I did check, and officially, India is the most populous country. So, obviously, we had to check this one off the list, but obviously, there's unless you're living under a rock, everyone knows that there's some amazing people doing good work in India around antinatalism, and I've got two of them on today. Um, so we've got Tejas and Sumit, and let's start with like a just a bit of an introduction. So if you both could like I don't know, just give like a general introduction of yourselves. Um, Maybe what sort of stuff you do relevant to antinatalism, and also like how did you originally come to find antinatalism? So Tejas, do you want to go first?
Oh, thanks. Um, my full name is Tejas Gokhale, just in case if that
Mm,
matters. Um, but my day job is in IT. I work as an IT architect in one of the banking companies. I have been vegan for more than 20 years. I used to be child free, so I turned vegan before knowing, what really veganism is. I just thought it's about food, and then later realized what veganism is, and then later realized what animal rights are. Slightly similar journey happened for antinatalism, although a little later than that. So I used to identify myself as child free. That was because I had questions in mind about why anybody, or at least I, should have children. So until around in the period of 2006 to 2010, until that period, I used to be like child free. At that time there used to be Yahoo groups, like very old. I'm probably revealing
mm.
my age here, but that time that was the thing, and there were child-free Yahoo groups which I used to be part of. Then when David Benatar came on the scene, I read his essays and then read his
Mm,
book, Better Never to Have Been, and I thought, okay, child-free is just the thing for myself, but it looks like this is beyond me. This is more than just whether I want to have a child or not. And gradually, I turned to antinatalism. And since then, it has been antinatalism all along.
mm,
I do have a YouTube channel and I try and make videos. I used to live in Ireland before, and I used to have some time and I made more videos than I am able to make now. I moved back to India,
mm.
but I still try to make some videos about antinatalism. So that's my journey about antinatalism pretty much.
Yeah, and I was excited that because you said that you'd started making a few more videos recently, but not as much as you used to. And I've enjoyed all of the ones that you've made recently. There was actually a video that I've been working on about animals and antinatalism, and you beat me to it. And when you uploaded that video, I was like, "Damn!" But I was also like, "Oh, I'm glad Tejas is making videos again, and like specifically on this topic because I think it's good for people to make videos around that. So I'm looking forward to any more that you get time to make. And also, I just want to acknowledge the legend status that you've achieved from being vegan for 20 years. So um bit of
Just by being alive as a vegan for
yeah,
20 years.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Just battling the B12 deficiency has shown your true character. Um Cool. Summit, do you wanna introduce yourself, and yeah, what do you do related to antinatalism? I think maybe your t-shirt kind of gives a bit of it away. And then how you came to discover antinatalism in the first place.
Yeah. So thank you for having me, Lawrence. And my name is Sumit Mazumdar. I am from Kolkata, India, and I came to understanding of antinatalism because of a rabbit. Yeah. So the story is that
Mm,
when I was in my pharmacy college, one of my seniors showed me a project she was working on, and she brought a cage with a rabbit and explained and started explaining to me like how the animals are used for drug testing and how we inject them in their eyes and everything. And until then it was something I didn't know that such practices were part of our curriculum. And as she was explaining, I started imagining myself in that rabbit's place and realized the immense suffering and cruelty it must have endured till then. And as I was listening to her, I noticed that the rabbit had given birth to five or six baby rabbits. And this
Mm,
sight, perplexed me. Like, why would a rabbit or a sentient being willingly subject its offspring to a life of agonizing existence? Because its future going is going to be the same as its parents, because it would be used for lab testing. And as I was thinking, it dawned upon me that we humans were no different. We were also perpetuating this vicious cycle of suffering, and we were
mm,
perpetually repeating this purposeless narrative again and again. And then finally, after so many years, the solution became strikingly clear that we could alleviate all the problems of suffering, simply by stopping procreation. And then I googled this topic, and I found a post about Pratima Naik and Anugrah and Childfree India.
mm.
It was rising that time, and Raphael Samuel. And and then I also saw Amanda's film on Activism. That was a huge impact on me. And this
Mm.
realization was like the missing puzzle piece of all the life's question. And so many questions could be solved because of this philosophy.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting story. I've never heard a story quite like that about, being that you said like witnessing this rabbit being born or giving birth as part of your course. Um, Yeah, that's like it's a very interesting way to get to it. I mean, it makes sense. I understand now that you've explained it. I understand the how that would have triggered the thought process that would have got to antinatalism, but it's not the sort of story that you expect people to come out with when you ask them how they became antinatalist. So it's an interesting one. Um, you also name dropped a bunch of people who we're gonna go over later in the discussion. Um, but just I like to start these things usually by zooming out a bit and not even really focusing on antinatalism straight away. The first thing I generally like to ask people is what is just like the culture like generally in India? And I know obviously the caveat has to be added that it's a massive country with many different regions and states, and so there will be different cultures within that. But is there anything that you can say in general about the culture in India towards discussing controversial ideas that are maybe outside of the mainstream? And if you can't say anything in general terms, just because there's so much diversity, is there anything you can say about maybe just the region that you live in or something like that?
All right, I'll go first, and Sumit, you can if you want. Um, so what my impression has been is that um, antinatalism, of course, it doesn't need to be said that doesn't exist. It's in the mainstream
Mm,
media of India, but it's in fact mistaken for anti-nationalism a lot of times.
mm.
And people think antinatalism is you're like anti-national a lot of times, just because we also have a lot of dyslexics, maybe. But um, so, but what I've seen is my impression, especially about India, is that the discussion about population really has a large audience.
Mm,
If you talk about population, understandably, it affects everybody in India.
mm,
If you talk about population, there would be more people who would be willing to listen to you than if you just talk about antinatalism.
mm,
They are related but different things. That's the observation I've had, and that's probably a gateway to introduce this subject most of the times. But we also have to be very, very careful when we talk about population, and the reason for that is any issue, especially about social justice or social reform or anything, becomes a Hindu Muslim issue in India.
mm,
You take any issue, whether it is vegetarianism, veganism, this, that, and population is no different. In the sense that there is this anxiety amongst Hindus that The fertility rate of Muslims is higher, so we would be outnumbered in certain number of
Mm,
years. The actual fact is, for the reason for fertility rate of certain group being higher generally is poverty, education, and so
mm,
on. It's nothing to do with religion, in fact, but that's used as a propaganda.
yeah.
And then there is also this. So on the one side, there is this fear, and so we should have more children and so on. But on the other side, there's also this like, oh, hang on, we have a large population, so we need to control that. And how can we direct our policies or incentives such that certain groups are targeted, and Muslims being one of them, poor people being another. So we have to be very careful of not falling into these traps
Mm,
while we talk about population of India and then antinatalism. So these are some of the what I should say is gateways to antinatalism, but challenges
mm.
about talking about antinatalism in India in general.
Yeah, it's interesting you were saying about the Hindu Muslim divide because it sounds like it's a bit like India's version of the culture war that, like America and
Yes.
England and other sort of Anglophone countries. Because it's kind of the same here. Like any topic you discuss that is at all controversial or people have debates over, it instantly gets sucked into this paradigm of the culture war of like the left has this position, the right has this position, and like both of them think each other are evil, and then someone's a pedophile, even though there's no evidence, like someone is a pedophile somewhere. And someone else is a fascist, and it's just like it just gets sucked into this dichotomy, and it's so annoying because it even happens to things that do not belong. It just that it jars and doesn't fit in this dichotomy, but people do it anyway. So it
Yeah.
kind of sounds like you have a similar thing, but with a different, like a religious angle to it, rather than just people. Yeah,
Just with a different color, but same
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, Summit, do you have anything to add on the sort of culture or cultures within India and how they interact with controversial ideas?
Yeah, I totally agree with Tejas, but the thing is that it is not like in Somalia, like in the previous episode we heard.
Mm,
Things are not like that here. We can do controversial topics in India. There is free discussion. Like you said, India has this huge diversity, or like religious differences and political differences are very high, and this tension frequently escalates to violence sometimes.
yeah,
And like Tejas was saying, we need to be very careful when we are out on the streets, especially because in online there is a kind of safety, but
mm,
on the streets we have to be very careful,
mm.
like the words we choose, the tone we adopt in speaking, and also in India, the color of the outfit that you wear,
Oh,
it's
really?
very triggering to people. Some, yeah,
So
because
what colors do you avoid and what colors are better and why is there that difference?
orange, green are the things we need to avoid, because people will think that you are representing a political party or a religious party, and you are trying to promote some kind of ideology. And
Yeah.
because on the streets people come and inquire that whether I'm representing a particular religion or not, or a particular political party.
Uh,
And some parts of the city in my area, of course it would be in all over India, some parts area are tolerant and open minded, and some parts are not so open about the subjects, because the dynamics of that area can prevent misunderstandings, because certain parts of the city has a minority community like
mm,
Muslims, and they think that we are trying to uh, you know like our intention is to diminish their presence and keep
mm,
them in this perpetual minorities group. And so certain people are very sensitive to this, so
mm.
we try to avoid those parts of the city.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting about the colors. I've never heard anything I've heard obviously some people want to avoid wearing a t-shirt that has maybe like swear words or something super aggressive on it. Although sometimes people to do that to get attention. But I've never heard like specific colors need to be avoided and stuff. So it's interesting that they're so associated with them.
It's so it's a bit like, I don't know if you know, Lawrence, but in Northern Ireland,
Mm.
you also have to avoid orange and green.
Oh, because of
uh,
the Protestant
it's
Catholic.
quite, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Ah,
exactly. There are now it's good. I mean, it's not as bad as it is in
yeah.
India at the moment, but it's similar to that. Yeah, there are parallels you can draw.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because of course the flags actually of Ireland and India are relatively similar. It's just flipped, and then India obviously has the symbol in the middle. That's interesting that it's the same colors, but completely different religions and different context. Um, yeah. So anyway, getting on to antinatalism now. So obviously you're just two people. India is a massive country, but do you have any sort of feeling of how many antinatalists there are in India? Do you think that um would you say, oh, is it super rare, or do you say actually no, there's a decent amount of antinatalists in India? And do you think what group do you think is larger? Do you think the group of people who are openly antinatalist are larger, or do you think there's an even larger group of people who actually probably agree with it but don't say anything publicly? Summit, do you want to go first for this one?
Yeah, Tejas, please go.
Oh, cool. Or Tejas, yeah.
Want me to go? Okay. So it's very hard to get the statistics and evidence
Mm.
for this. So I'll just say what my gut feeling
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
really, which can be completely wrong. One distinction I want to draw is child-free and antinatalism. Antinatalism is completely unknown in India
Mm,
most of the times. Child-free is getting some sort of
mm,
attention, and there are obviously more child-free people than those who would identify themselves as antinatalists. That's for sure. The other thing is that there is a lot of discussion coming up with marriages. So it is assumed in India that if you are having children, you are married, and if you are married, you will have children.
yeah.
These both assumptions are very strong in India, and these are getting challenged as of today in terms of, young demographics and in web series, in the films and media. So that's a growing sector,
Mm,
and I believe that definitely at least there are women who would align with child free to some extent. That's the feeling I have, because there is a big section of women in India who don't have access to contraception, and the sterilizations that happen in India happen more on women than men. There's like women are more eager to get sterilized than men, even though it's more taxing on their bodies
mm,
compared to men. So that's the evidence that women would more align to child free. As far as antinatalists is concerned, I think the numbers would be smaller than child free people, but I would think that there would still be a lot of people who don't know the word
mm,
antinatalism, who don't have an exact philosophical definition
yeah.
of that, but sort of have that somewhere at the back of their mind, and that would be at least in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, at least in tens of thousands, is my feeling.
Mm,
Of course, I don't have connected with them, but I do meet people, a lot of people who say that, I didn't know this exists. And now I think I feel better that these people are there.
mm,
Or I also have met parents who say that, oh, I agree with this. It's just that I didn't know. So I have a feeling that it should be at least in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands,
mm.
in 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the feeling I have.
Yeah, that's interesting. Summit, what do you think?
Yeah, I also completely agree with Tejas because this movement of antinatalism and child free are still in nascent stage. And like Tejas was saying, I think child free Facebook page has 20,000 followers right now, and I think in 20,000 there are 2 to 3,000 anti-natalists in it. And I think the people who are anti-natalist in this community have this responsibility to convince other child-free people of antinatalism, because I'm highly optimistic about the future of antinatalism in India,
Mm,
because India's population has a lot of young population, because 65% I think of Indians are below the age of 35. And on my personal experience on the streets and the YouTube analytics tell that people of this age group are very receptive to this antinatalism philosophy.
mm.
And I think there's a huge potential of antinatalists to increase in coming days. Uh, like Tejas was saying, that the current lack of widespread, antinatalist belief in India is because they are not adequately exposed to this philosophy.
Mm.
And if more and more people are exposed, I think the numbers would be very high in India.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, and we'll get onto this a bit more later, but obviously, from your T-shirt, we can see like "Stop Having Kids" has recently, become a thing in India, and I guess you would call it like anti-natalist street activism. Um, and also to a degree, Child-Free India has had, anti-natalist messaging as well. So it seems like in India, anti-natalism as like a public facing thing is becoming more and more uh, open and prominent. So even though it's it's obviously still very small, it'll be interesting to see what happens over maybe like the next 10 years or something. Because as you're both saying, there's maybe this large group of people who are sort of privately or unknowingly anti-natalist. Like they have those feelings, but they don't necessarily have anything to connect it to. So it'll be interesting that in the next maybe 10 years or so, as the idea becomes more prominent and groups become more public, those people will sort of become, I don't know how you want to put it, unlocked or whatever. um so it'll be so interesting to see, and we'll see if you're right or not. So we all need to put bets on whether Tejas and Summit have made correct speculations. Um, so this group has been mentioned a few times already, so I think it's good to bring it up. Child Free India. So um, Child Free India is obviously called Child Free India, so it's not anti-natalism India, but there are anti-natalists in child-free India. Um, so I'm not sure which of you would know more about child-free India. So maybe you can just both give some input. But like for anyone that has not heard of child-free India before this interview, like what is child-free India? How did it come about? And what role does it play in anti-natalism in India today? Tejas, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So Child Free India was founded even when I was not in India, like before I came back to
Mm,
India. And it was founded on the basis of child free by choice, but then to include all sorts of loosely anti procreative ideas and people,
mm,
a bunch of brains who are against procreation in some way or form. Everybody has their own boundaries about this subject. So that was the idea. And what I think it has done is it has become like um, it's an organization, but it is so spread across that it has sown the seeds in many different places in India, which is essential, and it's not even enough, but it's good thing
mm.
that now it's a lot of people are connected in some way or form to the concept of at least child free. I mean, people still use child free and antinatalism interchangeably, but at least they use some kind of term and they have this thought somewhere being
Yeah.
talked about. Even in the media, there are the articles are more about couples who are child free, or if you want to get married but child free. So it's still tied to all these things, but at least it's coming through, and Child Free India has had a good contribution to bring it upon, to get people connected and to get it talking.
Mm, mm.
So I think.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Summit, do you have anything? What's your perspective on Child Free India?
Yeah, so Child Free India has this also these subgroups and city-wise groups where they organize meetups and connect with each other. And I had the opportunity to connect with one such group of my city. And what I've noticed in that group, like they have this remarkable acceptance uh, of the lifestyle ideology among the youth, because what they have successfully presented their lifestyle, which I would say a hedonistic kind of lifestyle, and it becomes a rational choice to the young generation, because the young generation in India faces this immense pressure of getting the basic necessities of life, and there is this scarcity of job and sky high prices in India. So when they are given this opportunity, this alternative lifestyle, it's no wonder that they are readily embracing this concept.
Mm. Yeah, and I actually saw ages ago a video was done on Childfree India, right? Um, by a YouTube channel called Quint something, or maybe it was just Quint. I can't remember the exact name. Um, and they were interviewing a few antinatalists slash child free people in um, was it Bangalore?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bangalore. Bangalore.
Yeah, and there were a few people that Sumit mentioned at the start. Pratima and Anugrah were in that video, although Anugrah in the video did not have the massive beard that I know him to have. Although I don't know if he still has it now. So he looks completely different in that video from how I knew him to look. Um, but yeah, that video is sort of it's very professionally put together, and it doesn't, from how I saw it, it doesn't seem to have any sort of angle. It's literally just presenting them as they have their ideas. It didn't seem to have any angle of trying to make them look good or bad or anything like that. It seemed like a very sort of, neutral sort of way to present them, which I thought was good because, with antinatalists, people always have an angle of trying to make us look bad or something like that. So I'll link that in the description, and anything we refer to, I'll link in the description so people can see videos and websites and stuff like that. Um, but before we get like more on to sort of other things about antinatalism in India, I want to actually come back to something personal with you two, which is your own interactions and discussions around antinatalism. Um, like, what's your experience been discussing antinatalism with, like your friends or family? Are you open about it with them, or do you reserve it more for just talking to strangers and a specific group about it? Yeah, what's your experiences been? Sumit, do you want to go first this time?
yeah, okay. So I think when an anti-natalist openly advocates for such a controversial topic, they are bound to face, loss of friends and family members, because misunderstandings are inevitable, because
Mm,
uh, there are all because people don't like to listen to all your arguments, but they are just seeing you uh, going against this society and the norms, and they misunderstand you. And however, there are always the individuals who are close to you and willing to listen to all the
mm,
arguments, and they do understand why you are doing all this. uh, I have lost a lot of friends from childhood, but I've also, you know, mm, I've also received so much of love from different peoples, especially from Bangladesh, and because I am preaching in Bengali language, so it is becoming more popular in Bangladesh, and
mm,
my parents are still struggling to accept my conclusions, because they think that someone will stab me on the streets if I go and advocate for such kind of
mm,
things. But they are finding it difficult that they have done a mistake by giving birth, but I don't blame them for their decision because I see them also as a victim, just like myself.
Mm.
And but the thing is, they cannot alter the fact that the decision they took out of ignorance is the reason why I must, you know, endure this existence and eventually face death. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I have the same with in my situation. Like it, the it's a touchy subject in my family as well, basically. So to put it simply, but I it's like whenever someone takes on a controversial position, whatever it is, it's going to cause some sort of fracture in their family, maybe, not always, but a lot of times. But I think antinatalism is kind of unique in the fact that it's it's so relevant to the family situation, because you're talking directly about something that actually happened to you as well. Um, so it, it's understandable why, especially parents, will take it badly. Um, but some people have very positive experiences. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. I have a similar experience. Um, Tejas, what's your experience been with friends, family, other people you've spoken to?
I should say that generally speaking, antinatalism seems to be left liberal leaning.
Mm,
Um, but I do come from a very, very right wing family.
mm.
Like everybody in my family is very traditional, right wing,
You
religious, and so
absolute
on.
bigots.
Um, so it's a challenge in a different way. What has happened is that my views about this subject has now been known to my immediate family. In the sense, when I say immediate family, what I mean is that people who would accept me despite the complete disagreements on a certain
Yeah,
subject. So my views are known to my immediate family. The larger family, like the closer family, they sort of know, but they don't want to talk about it
yeah,
really,
yeah,
unless I go and poke them really. So that's the stalemate we live in. As for the rest of the friends and everybody, I think a lot of friends, some of friends do know my position and have discussed it and have had a sort of a discussion, I should put it mildly, and then left it there.
mm,
Others don't know. What I've also done very carefully is all along my career in at the workplace, nobody absolutely knows about this,
mm,
and I haven't been able to take that risk. Maybe some people would say I should, but I've not, and nobody at work knows about these views.
mm, mm.
Some might know about veganism at least, but nobody knows about antinatalism, and that has been the case since across many years, across many countries, many companies. That has been the case. So I have many connections who don't know that I am an
Yeah,
antinatalist. So I have to say congratulations when they declare that they're pregnant.
yeah,
But yeah, that's how it has been. So from that perspective, I'm sort of living a double life.
yeah.
Like at work, I'm like completely a natalist person, but in private, I'm an anti-natalist person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
In fact, you're thinking of having a kid just to keep up appearances. But no, I get what you mean. Like, work's a tricky one. Like at the end of the day, we've got to have money to live, right? So we need to make sure that our form of income is secure. And like going into your workplace and telling people you're an antinatalist, it's not necessary to do. It very likely won't really have a positive impact, um, and it can jeopardize your income. So I'm the same. Like in my work, a few people do know I'm vegan as well because that's very normal. It's very accepted in the UK that no one has any issues unless they've become one of these anti-vegan people who like whatever. We won't speak about them, but unless they're one of those people, it's totally there's no reason to hide it. But with antinatalism, it's different. It's so yeah, no one at work knows that. I don't talk about that, there's no point. So I completely get where you're coming from with that. Um, so one thing I've has been brought up, and obviously Summit's T-shirt gives it away as well. But also, I think it's relevant to this question of talking to people. So, as I mentioned before, Stop Having Kids is now in India, and unless I'm getting this very wrong, I feel like a couple of people have told me this. But Summit, I think, did you introduce Stop Having Kids to India? Or are you like one of the main people that helps run it in India? Um, but yeah, how is Stop Having Kids going in India, and what's the reaction been like on the street?
Yeah. So I can't really recall like how I stumbled upon the Stop Having Kids website,
Mm,
but few years back, and the moment I discovered the activism online, I felt so very happy that finally the street activism for antinatalism has started,
mm,
and I was so eagerly anticipating the the global involvement of antinatalists. But after a few months, I found that, to my surprise, that no new groups were forming around the world.
mm,
And I remember, discussing the idea of starting a chapter here in India with my friends for many months. But while they all agreed online that they were gonna come and start, but they hesitated to participate on the actual day. And I understand that their reservation about openly advocating for such a stance, because it causes strained social relationships. So a few of them were willing to join, but they were from Bangladesh, so physical
mm,
participation was not possible. And so one day I just resolved that let's just start the movement on my own. And on International Antinatalism Day last year, I
mm,
started a Stop Having Kids India chapter. I just saved up some money and printed out the posters and bought some camera gears and just painted this T-shirt and just went out on the
mm,
streets. And yeah, and and slowly as months passed, I continued doing it, and gradually more supporters came in. Right now there are 10 to 12 people who are who occasionally come and support and do street activism, but the main population of supporters are from Bangladesh, like I said.
mm,
And and I think engaging in discussion on antinatalism on the streets has proved to be incredibly rewarding. I think it's the best
mm,
thing of my life right now. It's the only
mm,
entertainment of my life right now.
mm,
Because to my surprise, we received so much of positive response from the youth. I was not expecting this, and they are so easily convinced of antinatalism. Like it makes perfect sense to them, you know.
mm,
At least I think most of them, because there are instances where people resort to abusive language, and but that's okay because not everybody is gonna understand the message. But the point is that, in my opinion, that rather than having small individual activism groups around the world, there should be one single worldwide organization. I think it amplifies the voice of the social movement on a global scale. Yeah, so
mm,
I think I would like to encourage all antinatalists from the world to consider, starting a new chapter of SHK in their cities, but of course prioritizing one's safety and well-being first. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting you were saying that people have been, or especially young people have been very receptive. What do you think is the main
Mhm.
driver behind that? Do you think that it's because, and this is just me speculating here, but knowing young people tend to be more like anti the system, anti the norm, anti the establishment, tend to be more left leaning. And given that population is a big issue in India, do you think that within that context, generally the youth tend to be more pro? reproductive autonomy and deciding not to have children as a way of kicking back against the mainstream, or have I got that wrong? What's your feeling on why it resonates with young people?
I think because there is so much of pressure on young people right now, because they cannot fulfill their dreams, and
Mm,
they have to get a job of like like the minimum paying jobs they have to get, because uh, they study for 30 to 35 years, and they are getting such a low amount of uh, wages, and so they cannot fulfill their day-to-day necessities. And when we present them this idea that they can, that it's an option to have a kid, and why one should, and if they also come to this option like I don't want to have kids, they are unable to convince their parents and grandparents, because India has this concept of joint families. They have to convince so many people, but when you are going out there and giving them the reasons and teaching them that you can use these reasons, so they readily accept it.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting. One thing you just said as well, or what you were just saying, kind of made another question pop up into my mind, um, which is obviously like India is famous for having a caste system, and I'm not sure how prominent it still is today, but does the caste system at all interact with antinatalism, or would it have any relevance to antinatalism, or are they do they not they don't really come into contact at all? I'm not sure if either of you have more knowledge on that than the other.
I think Tejas should say it,
You want to go,
but I
Sumit?
don't. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, Summit,
No,
you
no,
can
go
go.
ahead, please. Sorry. Yeah.
No, no, please just say. I was just saying that there is no caste system in the cities, but in the rural areas, I think there is still, because of, like they just was saying, Hindu and Muslims, like that. But I don't know much about it, so they just please say.
Yeah, I would like to differ on that, Sumit. I would not say that there is no caste system in the cities. There is, it's just not that evident easily. Of course, nowadays you don't see caste system in the sense of untouchability where people are not allowed to touch each other and so on. But caste system exists in slightly um, different ways. It's a little stealthy in the sense when it comes to marriages, for example, people don't tend to marry out of their caste in general. It's, they look at castes basically when they marry. That's one example. Then, of course, there are differences in economic classes where these castes belong. There are certain castes which are doing well, certain castes which are not doing well. And it is argued that that's because we're just looking through the caste lens. But it's still a fact that caste plays a role in terms of where you sit in the society and what sort of job you do and so on. So, what I wanted to correct myself that when I said that any issue in India becomes a Hindu Muslim issue, equally true is the fact that almost any issue also becomes a caste issue.
Mm,
And that's because it's the same. Well, the dynamics are a little different when when it comes to Hindus and Muslims. Hindus are a majority and Muslims are a minority, and the argument then becomes democracy is majority oriented, but you need to take care of minorities and so on. When it comes to caste, the lower caste, and it's an official word, I know it has it's not a good word, but it is what it is.
mm,
So the lower caste people, especially Dalits, are a majority people, and the upper caste people are relatively a minority people. And the upper you go, it's not just upper and lower, it's not like black and white. There are hierarchies of castes, and not just four hierarchies like the rest of the world knows. There are like hundreds of castes, and there are complex hierarchies in them. So the upper you go, the minority you'll get. The lower you come, the majority you'll get. That is how complex it is. every issue affects caste, and every issue is affected by caste. So if I am from a certain caste and I go out on a certain issue, I would be looked at as I am having a propaganda for my caste.
Mm,
If you go outside, in rural India especially, you would be asked your surname before your name. They're not interested in your name.
mm,
They are interested in your surname, because that identifies your caste, whether you identify it with that or not.
yeah,
So that is a problem. So now when I go outside and say that stop having children, it would be looked from the perspective of what caste this person belongs
right.
to and what agenda he has behind saying that. So that's there, unfortunately.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's so unfortunate that people lump you into a group identity that you either you do belong to, or that they impose upon you from how they interpret your character, or whatever. And when that happens, it goes from you are advocating for this message to this group is advocating for this message, and then all of the things associated with the group get associated with the message, and it just becomes so messy. It's like it's a similar story. It happens probably everywhere, but it definitely happens in like the UK a lot with politics. So what will happen with politics, and this probably resonates with a lot of people because I think humans are often just idiots and they always do this. But let's say you are a progressive person or a conservative person and you are talking about a specific issue that has not really any relevance to your wider political opinions, but you're just talking about one specific issue. Let's say, for example, euthanasia. um if you're a progressive person talking about euthanasia, um even though it has no connections really to your wider political beliefs. um a conservative person will interpret that as, oh, this is not just a person talking about euthanasia, it's a progressive person talking about euthanasia, and therefore it's part of the progressive agenda, and the progressive agenda is XYZ, so that gets linked to euthanasia. And it happens with all sorts of topics, and it will happen both ways. So if a conservative person spoke about euthanasia, the progressive person would then be like, oh, well, it's a conservative person, not just a person. And it's really frustrating. So, and you've just got another layer of it in being cast there. So, yeah,
One very specific example I want to point out is that I had made a video long back in responding to Stefan Molyneux,
yeah,
and his argument was that antinatalism requires certain amount of intelligence
mm,
and probably education to understand, and these are the people who should have children, and people who don't understand it are the people who should rather not have children. Basically what he was saying was it's the poor people who should not have children
mm,
and the privileged people who should, so that we have a better society, was his argument. The same argument can be converted into an economic class, which is like, and also into caste.
mm,
So these are the lower class people who are dirty people, not good people. They are having a lot of children, they are having lots of children, and they shouldn't. You should if you're upper caste, and so on. That's the kind of, I know it's a very crude argument
mm.
and horrible argument, but that's the form it takes, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's the bullshit people come up with. Like, whenever you try to discuss anything, unless you're with someone who's a very, independent-minded, considered person, most people just layer so much bullshit on top of things that you want to talk about, and it's really frustrating. But yeah, apart from, so we discussed Childfree India, which I'm not sure what sort of activism it does at the moment, if it does any, or if it's just sort of more like a community based thing. But we've spoken about Stop Having Kids, who I think Stop Having Kids, obviously it's centered around activism, but it does have a community element because it obviously physically brings people together. And when that happens, naturally, there's a community element to it. But is there any other sort of activism that's going on in India that you are aware of with regards to antinatalism, or is it, have we covered everything that you're aware of? Either of you go.
I don't think there are no anti-natalism activism in my city at least, but
Mm,
there are many vegan activism and
mm,
environmental issues activism, also children welfare activisms and protests that goes on. And I think we should try to collaborate with them and show how antinatalism can help them reach their goals much faster.
mm, yeah. Tejas, are you aware of any other?
No, I think I agree with Sumit. Like that's the small form we have today.
Yeah,
We don't have anything other than that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it's. I mean, it. What there is in India is more than many other countries. So, I mean, India is ahead of the curve anyway, and things will build up. So there will be more things over time, especially since even though like I was referring to like Child-Free India or part of Stop Having Kids as like a community element as well. But community elements are important because once you build community, activism will come from that. So it provides like a foundation for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more over time, which will be exciting to see. Um, so actually, moving on to politics now, even though we've already mentioned it. So like I said at the start, and we've already mentioned, so India is now the most populous country in the world. Population is clearly a big issue, whether social or political issue that people discuss and gets brought up. What are the political trends, or are there any laws that have come in or may come in the future, or are there any movements that are relevant to antinatalism or procreation that you're aware of in India? Either of you can go first.
What I've heard, and I'm going to add a few more things to that later on, is that there are demands about incentivizing um, population control. So let me first set a background.
Mm,
Okay, India has had a very nasty history as far as antinatalism is concerned or population control is concerned.
mm,
In the 70s, especially in the period from 1975 to 1977, there were many men who were forcefully sterilized, vasectomized. I think the figure is around 6.2 million men were forcefully sterilized, and thousands in them actually died because of botched surgeries.
mm,
So what happened was that has set back the politics of India as far as this issue is concerned completely to at the start. Like nobody really dares to talk about it unless and until it's really, really demanded by their own
mm,
constituents. So from then on, population control has taken a backseat. We are seeing the effects of that. But now there are some voices on both sides of the political divide to do something about it. There are voices to have some policies where you disincentivize people from having children in the way that if you're having a government job, you can't have more than two children. But how it is enforced and how equally it is enforced is a problem.
mm,
How discriminately it is done or how discreetly it is done or how equally it is done is a problem. Apart from that, India does have a very good, um, even though I said that the sterilization has had problems, India still does have a very good policy on sterilizations. It provides, or at least the government has good intentions of having policies around family planning.
mm,
That also includes incentivizing welfare of pregnant women, but also includes incentivizing contraception and vasectomies and
mm,
so on. So that's there, and the hope is it gets more as people get educated and wealthy and move on to the urban areas. But that's where we stand today. One contradiction in all of
mm.
this, and it's a big contradiction, is that India has not done its census.
Yeah,
So census in India used to be conducted every 10 years. It was done for the last 180 years. Even in World War II, even in World War wars against Pakistan,
yeah,
we had two or three wars. Even in all these areas, all these periods, census was done. No matter what, census was done.
yeah,
2021, the it was postponed with an excuse of COVID.
Yeah.
It has not been done until now. It's now 2024 will come up. There'll be elections. It'll not be done until start of 2025.
Yeah.
Is what I think. That's a very big contradiction. And to tie back to the caste problem of, the question that you had asked, there are big disagreements among politicians and people in India about whether the census has to be done on caste basis. Should you record the caste of the person when you're counting the people, or
Right.
should you not? So historically, it has been done on and off. It has been done for certain castes. It has not been done for certain castes. And there is a tension about, we would not allow census to happen until you allow caste. Other parties, we would not allow it if you allow caste, and so on. So it's
Yeah.
locked in that discussion as well. So that's where we stand, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I've got a follow-up question, but I'll just let Summit come in if you've got anything to add on politics and anything related to procreation.
No, I don't have anything to add. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no worries. So my follow-up question was, you were saying that India is somewhat open to well, I might have misunderstood you, but what I got from what you just said is that India is relatively open about the use of contraception. Um and obviously that that will vary by region, and obviously religion then will get involved because some religions are very anti contraception. Um But I just wanted to ask, what is because you said there's a history of, a negative history of forced sterilization, um, and that's sort of tainted modern day discussions around population. W- How easy is it? And again, this will vary by region, but generally, is it relatively easy for someone to access a sterilization? You did mention before that there's a higher demand for women to get sterilization. What's the situation with sterilization in India?
So as far as I know, again, there's always has to be this
Yeah, yeah.
disclaimer with generalization and all. Um, it is available in the sense government schemes incentivize you to get sterilized. In fact, there are campaigns, like there have been campaigns even after that setback in 90s and noughties about, they used to call hum do hamare do, and that means we too and our too, and that's it. So there are incentives for you to get sterilized after you've had two children.
Mm,
So the norm is that, yeah, you have one or two children and then get sterilized. And that's how it has been seen as well. The reason women are more eager to get in the rural areas, this is the media reports, what I've read. In the rural areas, they are more eager to get sterilized, is because women have to work in unorganized sector. They get paid low wages than compared to men. They get oppressed. Obviously, there's a lot of sexual exploitation, and it generally is not seen as a masculine thing to get sterilized.
right.
And
Beta male
if you are a woman, yeah, yeah,
sort of.
and
Yeah.
if you are a woman, and if you get pregnant, you would rather not have that. On top of that, there's one very cruel angle to it. So there are certain sections, there are unorganized industries like tobacco, for example, or sugarcane. There, these workers, they are sexually exploited, and women are always, they always have an underlying fear that if this comes to me, pretty much if I get raped, really,
Mm,
if I get pregnant, I'm going to have a hard time handling all of this. So I would rather get sterilized.
mm,
So there have been media reports which I've read, and where women actually go and get themselves sterilized. It's not clear whether they get it after they've had their children with their
mm,
actual husband or not, but usually they would have one or two children and then go to sterilization. But at least that is the reason they are eager to get
mm,
sterilized. Men are not as much
mm,
eager,
mm.
although it's open. I mean, you would still have hard time if you go in a vasectomy clinic and ask for a vasectomy when you don't have any children and you're young, like in your 20s or
Yeah.
30s. You would still be challenged saying that, get married, have children, and come back. But I believe it's not as difficult as it might be somewhere in US or Canada,
Yeah.
for two reasons. Partially because there is this openness and this pressure, but also because regulations are very loose. Nobody really
Mm.
cares about you. And again, that's partially because the more the population, the less the value life has.
Yeah.
So all these factors are there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting, and it's kind of annoying that like, although it's probably expected because again we're dealing with humans here, but it's annoying that you were saying that men are more hesitant to get sterilized, and one of the reasons is that it's seen as not masculine. um and I can understand why people interpret it that way, because obviously, at least in the West, masculinity is interpreted as the three P's: provider, protector, procreator, right? Those are sort of the three pillars of Western masculinity, at least. And obviously, procreation, you can't do that if you're sterilized. So I can understand um, like why people interpret that way of it being not masculine to to get sterilized. There are two sort of ways that someone could approach this. One is obviously just to question what masculinity means. Someone can say, "Well, I have no care for what is masculine or not," and they can sort of reject the gender norm. That's one maybe sort of left leaning approach to it. The other approach that I hear more commonly, although and again, I'm talking from my bubble. So I do hear people use that approach of rejecting that prescription of masculinity. But I do also hear people take another avenue, which is saying, well, actually, I don't think it's masculine to not have control over your own autonomy and reproductive system. And actually, having a vasectomy and getting sterilized is actually a real way for a man to take control of his own future. Which I'm not sure if you say that is masculine, but I think it's definitely perceived as masculine to have control over a situation. Um, Again, there are some people that would just reject masculinity in general, but if someone wants to maintain their masculinity and be sterilized, I think that's a perfectly good way of interpreting it. Of saying, "Well, I'm taking control of this situation. I want to have control over my future," and and that's one way of doing it. Um, so yeah, I just find it unfortunate that it's interpreted in that way of that it's emasculating, because it really doesn't need to be. But again, because of the traditional prescriptions of those three P's, at least in the West, I don't know if it's slightly differently interpreted in India. I can understand where they get that interpretation from. I just think it's um, unfortunate. But it's good to hear that that getting sterilization is maybe more even open in India than somewhere like America. In the UK, it's very easy. Again, like you said, there's maybe some nuances around if you're very young and you haven't had kids. But I was that case. I haven't had kids, and when I got it, I was 23, and I had no pushback at all. So it depends on the situation you find yourself in. But yeah. Did either of you have
I
anything else
just
to?
want
Yeah, go on.
to, yeah, just want to tell a very interesting thing. 1952, which is a long time back,
Mm.
my grandfather got sterilized.
Mm.
My my only regret is he did it after he had children.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because you,
But
yeah.
yeah, if he could get sterilized in 1952, I think that was for a country which was like, it was 5 years since it got its independence.
Mm.
That country was like absolutely poor, but even then he could get sterilized
Mm.
itself was something I thought is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of it's like a glimmer of hope. It's a nice story that hopefully things will only improve. Um, so I think Sumit mentioned his name at the start of uh, when he was introducing himself, but maybe his name hasn't been brought up already. So, one name that I think a lot of antinatalists will be familiar with, or maybe they won't, I don't know, is Raphael Samuel. Um, so Raphael Samuel became maybe at one point the most well-known antinatalist in the world. I'm not sure if he overtook any other contenders like Schopenhauer or Benatar or someone like that, but um, he was very well known at a point, and he's still relatively well known. But obviously, there was a peak when he did what he did. But I want to leave it to you guys to explain. But yeah, who is Raphael Samuel? What did he do, and what impact did it have for antinatalism in India? I don't know if either of you know are particularly knowledgeable on this. So, um, yeah, whoever wants to pick up and feels comfortable, go for it.
Do you want to go? Tejas? I just have basic knowledge of Raphael Samuel.
All right, I'll go. So, as far as I know, Raphael Samuel, he declared that he's going to sue his parents for having him
Mm,
without his consent. That was his main argument. And again, as far as I know, he didn't actually file a case. Maybe my knowledge is outdated, but he didn't actually do
yeah,
that, was my
yeah.
the
That's
last I
my
had heard.
understanding as well.
Yeah. But definitely got viral,
Mm,
pretty much. And it has done good for antinatalism, in my opinion. It hasn't created any controversies in the sense of um, any bad reputation for antinatalism. I think if anything it has done good for antinatalism. So I'm happy about that. One point, although I would want to observe or note here, is that we cannot compare Raphael Samuel to likes of Schopenhauer and Benedict,
mm,
for the reasons that if you take environmental activism, for example, there's Greta Thunberg,
mm,
and there are actual environmental scientists in IPCC who are actually
yeah.
doing the study of the impact. These are two different realms, and they're doing their own good job in their
Mm,
areas. And I think that's how Raphael Samuel's thing plays out. So Raphael is in a different realm, whereas Benatar and Schopenhauer more of an academic
mm,
philosophy through truth finding them, although one is based on the other,
mm,
but different different globes, I think, different worlds. But yeah, that's how it is.
mm. Yeah, Summit, is there anything else on top of that that you're aware of, Raphael Samuel?
I think Raphael is still having a YouTube channel and he's making videos. And from the day he got viral, he has been doing tons of interviews, international and national, and he's still doing interviews till now. And
Mm.
I think he's a great activist. He's spreading antinatalism. Uh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've got to say, when he actually did it at the time of him or sort of declaring that he is going to sue his parents, or threaten to do it. I wasn't really aware of it at the time. I found out about it afterwards, but it was really interesting that it didn't just blow up in India; like it really blew up globally. Um, and I want to interview him at some point because I want to get like the sort of backstory of it. Of like, did he just like plan to put it in his local paper and it just really got out of hand and just went massive? Or what, did he get a few people behind him and did they actively try to push this out and then it caught fire? Like, it would be really interesting to hear the story behind something that went so viral, that was based in antinatalism. Um because another person who has also had similar successes is Les Knight, who is he calls himself the finder rather than the founder of the voluntary human extinction movement, and he's also had very similar success in the media. And I interviewed him and asked him about this, and he said that it was really just organic. He never tried to push anything out there. It just so happened that, probably just because of the nature of the subject, because it's like strange and the media like to, you know, put limelight on strange and extreme or whatever things. He just gained media attention, and then obviously it culminated in his appearance on Tucker Carlson. Um, so it'd be interesting to also interview Raphael to get a bit of the backstory behind his experience being in a bit of a media storm. But yeah, it was really interesting to look back on some of the news reports and stuff about how big it went. Um, what did it have a particularly big influence in India, or was it more of an international phenomenon? Did it kind of like shoot out of India and go across the world, or did it also have like quite a big impact and generate discussion in India as well? Do either of you know about that?
I I did see a lot of media reports. He was on Indian media channels as well, like TV channels,
Yeah.
giving interviews, and he was in many newspapers. So I think he was there in Indian media as much as he was in international media.
Mm.
He was also on what's his name? Stephen Colbert,
Oh, really?
uh, late night show. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't.
not like he wasn't interviewing there.
Yeah.
No, no, no. He didn't interview, but he was mentioned as
Oh,
he
right.
made some joke about him.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
itself is good thing. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh, okay. I get what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll have to try and find the link for that if there is a if there's a clip on YouTube of that and link it or something. But I'll find a few videos and articles or see if you guys have any particular ones you recommend, and I'll link them for people to look at. Um but other than Raphael, are there any other big antinatalist figures in India, whether in history or in the present day, that you think should be mentioned? I have one person's name who I want to bring up, but I just want to open it to you guys to see what names you bring up. Sumit, do you?
I think I have the same person as you have.
Okay,
Sorry.
cool. Okay, well, okay. If you've got one person, let's see if Sumit. Do you have any names you want to bring up?
Yeah, of course. Acharya Prashant is the one who is actively
Okay, yeah,
preaching
that was
right
who I
now.
was going to bring up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
what
I
do you
think
know about him?
he never. Yeah, Acharya Prashant never speaks of ethical antinatalism. He
Mm,
just spreads environmental antinatalism. I don't know because of uh, losing his followers. I think because it is too fringe.
yeah,
Uh, but I don't think there is any present day other than him, any antinatalism figures
yeah.
right now.
But
But
who is he?
but he's an IITN. I think. I think Tejas knows his
Yeah.
background.
Yeah. So I would want to. Can I go ahead, Sumit? Sorry. Please finish your thing.
Yeah, please go.
Okay. So first of all, Acharya Prachant is IITs in India are Indian Institute of Technologies. So
Right.
these are like special, high privileged technology colleges, universities in India.
Okay.
There are a few of them. It started with five. Now there are, I don't know how many there are, but they are like top technology universities. So
Mm,
if you are from one of them, you are seen as like, very
yeah.
intelligent person. That's the general stereotype. So he is an alumni of one of
Yeah.
those. I think it's IIT Mumbai, but I'm not sure. But what his main bread and butter, so to say, is to teach people about Vedant. And Vedant is, so you might have heard about Vedas. Vedas are scriptures written in Vedic period about from 1500 BC to 800
Mm,
BC in India,
yeah.
which were foundation of Indus civilization at the time. And after that, so Vedant is Ved plus Ant. Ant is same as end. Ant and end comes from same root of the words in Indo-European languages. So Vedant is the ending of Vedic period and the scriptures written at that time, which sort of summarize Vedas plus add something else. So
Mm,
there are like 108 Upanishads and so on. So his main area is to preach people about these scriptures. um, there is a tremendous philosophy in these scriptures. I am not equipped to understand all of it, although I try and go and read it from a non-religious perspective.
mm,
Schopenhauer is what I've read, was a big fan of Vedant philosophy, He was probably one of the first Western philosophers who read Vedant along with Buddhism.
Mm,
Buddhism is parallel to Vedant, so his main job is to teach that philosophy. It's
right.
a very deep philosophy, but along the lines, that philosophy does touch upon some aspects of antinatalism. So he does talk about that from that light. Now, from what Sumit said, that he talks about environmental antinatalism, he does. But I believe, from what I've seen, he also talks about ethical
Yeah,
antinatalism.
I have
In
seen a
the sense, he
yeah.
has,
I have also seen a clip where he talks about ethical antinatalism as well, yeah.
yeah. So he has said for things like having a child is a crime,
Mm,
things of that sort. So he does talk about that, but he talks about from the angle of Vedant. His main thing is Vedant. He is a Hindu. He identifies himself as Hindu, and I believe he thinks Hindu, that philosophy is superior to any other, which I don't believe. That philosophy, my problem is that it's more of a now it is, of course, it's more of aphorisms and metaphors and comparisons. Whereas analytical philosophy, the modern day analytical philosophy, is more direct, like David Benatar.
mm,
Vedant is more like a European continental philosophy.
mm.
But again, it's a good thing that he talks about it, and the kind of following he has, he talks about it. Obviously, is the best possible thing you can expect from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like him.
Is he also considered like a guru of any sorts? Because I've seen guru be in the title of some videos that he's in.
He uses Acharya. Um, Acharya means a teacher. As far as I know, I might be wrong there.
Yeah.
It's a combination of two words. Arya being refers to the Aryan race, which has got a bad reputation after Second World War.
Yeah.
But that's what it comes from. So yeah, he uses Acharya, which sorts of practically means a teacher, and Guru also means a teacher
Okay.
or a preacher. So yeah, and you know what? In India, at least, I can't speak for the rest of the world. People are eager to make somebody a guru. They just
Right.
want somebody to tell them what they want to hear anyway.
Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's very easy to become a
Yeah.
person like that.
Yeah, he's an interesting character from what I've seen. I actually watched some clips of his recently to refresh my mind on his opinions um before this. And there is a video out there of him uploaded to an antinatalist channel where he talks about um parents being indebted to their child, questioning that many people see the child being indebted to the parent because, and I think the paradigm shift that this hinges on is the idea of life being a gift. And he talks about, I'm not sure if he actually uses the term gift, I can't remember, but he talks about how people view life as a gift, and as such, if you've given someone a gift, they are then indebted to them, even though that's not actually how a gift works. The whole point of a gift is that it's supposed to be freely given with no strings attached. Otherwise, it's not a gift. Um, but people twist the idea of a gift often, and they say, I have gifted you life and therefore you're indebted to me. But he questions that and says, actually, no, life is not a gift. And I can't remember if he uses the term burden or if he implies it, but he implies that essentially it's a burden and that actually you are now indebted to them and you've got to help them um, achieve the things they want to achieve, have food, shelter, water, nourishment, all this sort of stuff. Um, and I think essentially what he's espousing there is the antinatalist take on parenting and parental responsibilities, basically shifting it. Um, Although it is worth saying that not all natalists do view their children as being indebted to them. It's just a very common way of natalists interpreting um, the flow of responsibility in the parent child relationship, seeing it as flowing towards them, that children have a responsibility to them rather than them having a responsibility overwhelmingly to their child. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Do you also know if he's vegan or not? Because one clip I did see of his was a clip where he was attending a thing called Ahimsa Fellows, which seems to be, I didn't fully understand it, but it seems to be some sort of effective altruism, animal rights uh, conference or something. Do either of you know what Ahimsa Fellows is, and if this guy is a vegan or not?
So, whether he himself is a vegan or not, we would not know. But he definitely talks in favor of veganism. He
Okay.
has talked about he has talked about milk. He definitely opposes meat, but he also, it's very common to oppose meat in India.
Yeah.
There are many vegetarians. That's not a big thing. But he also has opposed milk, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
So I believe whether he's vegan or not, he has advocated for veganism, that is for sure,
Yeah.
and he is as popular among animal rights people as he is in anti-natalist community in
Okay.
India. So I think he might be vegan. We can guess that.
Yeah. And do you know what this Ahimsa Fellows thing is, or are you not aware of that?
I am not, but I would guess ahimsa means
Mm.
non-violence, and there are hundreds of organizations having that word because that's a
Okay.
buzzword.
Yeah.
Really, you use ahimsa, which means non-violence, and
Yeah.
then you are on this side of
Okay.
compassion, empathy, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
must be
I'll
somewhere.
I'll find a link to it and put it in the description if anyone's interested. I haven't fully looked into it, but from what I did see, it seems to be an Indian interpretation of effective animal activism. Um, yeah, So I'm not sure. People can take from that what they will. Look into it, see if it has anything to it. Um, So we've talked a bit about antinatalism in media and stuff from referring to Raphael Samuel. What's the extent of antinatalism being discussed in Indian media in terms of the radio or newspapers or on TV? Is it something that yeah, just what is the extent of it? Has it been sort of widely spoken about in, are there many media appearances of antinatalists or short documentaries or pieces on it? Um, Sumit, do you want to go first? What is your sort of um, experience of seeing antinatalism in the media, if you have at all?
I think antinatalism gained significant visibility in mainstream media during 18 and 19, 2018 and 19,
Mm,
thanks to Raphael Samuel. Several online news outlets published discussing the concept, and more recently, I think on International Antinatalism Day, this 9th April, Stop Having Kids India chapter was prominently featured in two newspapers
oh,
and an
nice.
online news platform. Yeah, and the articles were expertly crafted and presented in a, all the good ethical arguments of antinatalism was presented in the articles, and that too in the local language in which we are trying to spread antinatalism. And it was a very noteworthy press coverage. And I don't think there are any other movies or short films that have antinatalism in it. But I think in the southern parts of India, there are some movies that have antinatalism. At least I've seen some shots of antinatalism movies there, but I didn't understand the language. I think Tejas can say.
No, I think you've covered everything. I just want to say, more than antinatalism, again, child free is more prominent in the media.
Yeah.
There are comedians nowadays who are, it's hard to know whether they are anti-natalist or just child
Mm,
free, but they do talk about, they make jokes on having children or not having children and so on. So that's coming up. There are some web series I've seen, like popular web series, which talk about this issue again from the angle of couples marriage
mm,
to have children, not have children, from that perspective. So it's very hard to know the distinction at some
mm,
point. One very peculiar point to note right now is, at the moment, um, Prime Minister of India,
mm,
which is the leader of the ruling party, and the opposition leader of India, both are, they don't have any children, and I don't think they would have any children in the future,
mm,
looking at their ages. So it's not unusual to see people who don't have children,
Mm,
but it's just that it's unusual to see people who openly talk about not having children.
mm, mm.
That's how it is.
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to get some of the links from you guys on some of those things, just so we can put them in the description, so people can see any sort of representation of antinatalism in the media there. Um, do either of you have any sort of advice to, let's say, someone who is in India and is an antinatalist, but they're not really connected with anyone, and they see this video? Do you have any advice on how they can connect with people uh, around antinatalism in India? Are there any like, yeah, I don't know, forums or groups anywhere, or in person things that they can connect with? Sumit, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I think many anti-natalist or they don't know they are anti-natalist still now. But if they have watched this video and other anti-natalist video, and one generally genuinely grabs the concept of anti-natalism, but chooses to remain silent and conform to the societal norms out of fear of losing one's reputation, friends,
Mm,
or alienation from family. But deep down, they know that it is morally wrong. It is just denying one's own existence. I think it is same as unaliving oneself. Because basically you cannot express oneself. So I
mm,
request every anti-natalist to come out on the street and create a stop having kids movement if you feel comfortable, or go to social media or do some sort of activism in which you feel comfortable. And because there are so many groups right now like Childfree India, Tamil Antinatalism, and others so very active groups in the internet, and start participating in meetups and hangouts, because trust me, you will lose many friends, but in return
mm,
you will have so wonderful and like-minded people that you can form communities and share your views, that it will make your life worthwhile.
mm. And do you have any recommendations on how they can find people to connect with them? Are there specific, I don't know, Facebook groups or Discord servers or anywhere that people can connect with others?
Yeah, I think there are Facebook, there are many groups, and Instagram, and I think we can link them down on the description.
Yeah, yeah, I'll get the links from you
I
guys.
think Child Free India still might be a good gateway for anybody to get connected. The Child Free India is on Facebook, or you can look up Child Free India. And once you get through that, there are many. WhatsApp is has now become a de facto communication standard in India. I
Mm,
don't know how it is in other countries. So there are many, many, many WhatsApp groups related to child free and antinatalism. I am in many of them, and there are many more. Also on Telegram, there are many groups.
mm,
So these are the things. I think Child Free India might still be a good gateway.
okay.
Look that up, and you would find a number to get connected on WhatsApp, and then you get through.
Great. Yeah. It sounds like it sounds like one of those things there. Once you get into one group, you'll then find all the links to the other groups. They'll just filter through, and then before you
Yeah.
know it, you'll be in 100 groups, and then you'll want to fucking leave all of them. I find that's the case. You sort of like, the amount of group chats I'm in blows up and then comes down because I leave them all. Then blows up, then comes down. um,
True.
yeah, yeah, I've got to say. So, my recommendation that I'll add in here is join these groups, but be selective. Find the high quality ones and join those. um, yeah, yeah.
Choose your battles.
Exactly, yeah, choose your battles, yeah. Um, what before we finish, what plans do either of you have for the future? I know, Tejas, you obviously have the YouTube channel. I don't know if you're planning to have any videos in the works at the moment, or any plans for the future. Sumit, obviously you've got Stop Having Kids. So yeah, what are both your plans for the future, if you have any at the moment? Sumit, do you want to go first?
like the future, like the future on antinatalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
future
So
projects around.
our
Yeah.
loc yeah. So our local Bengali antinatalism group that we have established just last year has been we have been actively involved in creating literature on antinatalism in local languages, and
Mm,
till date we have successfully published three books, which two of them has been very widely received in the Bengali community. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have crossed path with individuals like Mohana Shetu, Sham Sarko, and other member of the groups from Bangladesh who are so committed to the movement, and it's truly
mm,
inspiring. And our long-term plan is that we are going to continue create this literature, keep on translating English antinatalism books, so that because because transforming this ideology into a full-fledged movement will likely require multiple generations.
mm,
Therefore, we want to we want to equip the next generation of activists with a solid foundation of literature in local
mm,
languages. Because by providing this content, we hopefully will accelerate their progress, and they may start working on policy reforms and utilize these resources to shape public opinions. and
mm,
and current objective of our group is that we want this year we want to do our campaigns in the colleges of our city, in front of the colleges, because we
nice.
just want to target the youth right now.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. No,
because
it's a
I think it's going
you.
to be
Yeah.
instrumental in raising awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, universities are a good place to hit. I mean, again, there's different cultural contexts, but in the UK, universities tend to be a good place to. I mean, especially for antinatalism, you want to target places where there are young people because they tend to be the people that haven't procreated yet, right? There's no point going to a care home. With old people and advocating for antinatalism because the damage is already done if it's going to be done. Do you get what I mean? So, um, yeah, so I think universities are a good place to go. Universities and nurseries, start them young. Go to go to nurseries and start advocating. No, I'm joking. Obviously, no one go to a nursery and harass the toddlers. Um, but yeah, Tejas, what are your future plans?
I don't have plans to make more videos. It's just I'm struggling with time
Mm,
most of the times.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely videos are on card. I am also, in fact, meeting today evening with a group of young people who are eager to do some kind of street activism in this part of the country.
Mm,
So if you are listening to this video and happen to be from Pune is the name of my city, by the way, or somewhere in Maharashtra, please do connect. We are, thinking of organizing something. I will connect with you, Sumit, also for having stop having children is my idea to present to them and see what they see.
mm.
So yeah, that's the plan at the moment.
Great. Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully you guys connect and then anyone who sees this will also reach out. That'll be great. I'll get a contact from both of you to put in the description so that people can have a way to reach out to you individually if that's okay. It's up to you both obviously. Um but yeah, I will put that contact in the description. But generally, is there somewhere online that people can follow you? I know Tejas, you've got your YouTube channel. Sumit, there's the YouTube channel that you help run, and a Twitter as well, and I think on Facebook as well. But do you just want to both reiterate the names of any of the places that people can find you? Tejas, do you want to go first?
I have a YouTube channel called just Antinatalist. For the partially because I'm not very creative and partially because I want it to be translatable to other language. So I
Yeah,
have Antinatalist and Prajan Virodi together. Obviously, you'll get the link in the
yeah,
description. I also have Twitter at the red vegan tenatalism. A horrible portmanteau, but that's what it is. Yeah, those are the two places I think you can find me. You can find me on Facebook, but yeah, I'm there, but I,
yeah.
I don't know if you want to link that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Summit, where can people follow the work that you do and the groups you're involved in do?
Yeah, so we have groups in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and there is a website called Coda, and everywhere our username is Bengali Antinatalist, and people can join in and support us.
Great. And I'll get the links from both of you, put them in the description, so people literally just have to click them. It'll be easy. But that was everything I had before we finish. Is there anything to do with antinatalism in India that we didn't cover and you think should be mentioned?
No, I think we covered it all.
Cool.
I have one point.
Yep.
I probably will be making a video on it anyway. Is the aspect of abortion,
Yep.
because it's a sensitive aspect all over the world. Abortion is legal in India. It's the problem with abortion is that abortion is banned in India if you do sex selection, if it is based on sex selection. So it is first of all illegal to find out the sex of the baby, the prospective baby.
Right.
But it, so abortion is illegal for that reason if you do it for that, because abortions happen for the in unregulated way on a large scale. Girls are aborted, female fetuses are
Mm,
aborted on a large scale because nobody wants girls, unfortunately.
mm.
So for that reason, it's illegal. So sometimes it gets confused with our stance on abortion. We are very pro-abortion, but we are not pro-abortion when it's just
Yep.
females.
Right.
So that's a confusion, and if anybody is hearing and has that idea in mind, I want them to be clarified with that.
Yeah.
Apart from that, just a big thanks to you, Lawrence, for doing what you're doing.
No, I mean, thank you, Tejas. And given that you're an OG both on veganism and antinatalism, um, that means a lot. And it's interesting what you say about abortion as well. It's a similar case to what was happening in China when they had the one-child policy. There was a heavy bias towards boys against girls, and I think that's sort of the implications are starting to be seen now, obviously, because the the generation that happened to have gotten to a age of maturity where they start dating, stuff like that. So you hear these stories coming out of China of the fact that there are loads of men, loads of extra men that don't have women to become girlfriends or wives and just get into relationships with. And I think maybe history has shown that if you have a lot of young men in a country that don't you know are not sexually selected, it can go badly. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know, but yeah, hopefully similar issues don't happen on that scale in India, but I don't know, we'll see what the future holds. But thank you so much for both coming on. It's been really cool speaking to you both, and I'm glad that now an episode has been done on India, because it's a big country in terms of population, but it also in terms of politics, it's only going to become more important. But also in terms of antinatalism, it's played a big role in antinatalism, and I think a large proportion of antinatalists are in India as well. So it was a really important country to cover, and I couldn't think of two better people to cover it. So thank you both for coming on. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thanks, Lawrence, for
Thank
having
you.
us.